Hello folks, and welcome to another video tutorial. Last time I was talking about how to create select sequences and how to cut from them into a main sequence. Today I'm going into a bit more detail with the whole organization of select sequences, and also I'll be addressing some issues you may be having if you're coming from other editing software. So here I am in a select sequence timeline. This should look quite similar to the select sequence I created in the last tutorial. You'll notice that all of my selects I have nudged up onto the V2 video track, and all of the clips on the V1 video track are what you might call the non-selects. In other words, these are the clips which I haven't selected, but I don't want to remove from the timeline because they might be helpful later on. So you'll notice here on the left I've highlighted just the V2 track indicator, and this just means that as I jump from clip to clip using the arrow keys, it means that I'm only selecting the clips on the V2 video track. But something you'll notice if I zoom in here, when I get to the end of this clip, I'm now seeing in the program monitor the first frame of this non-select. So something you might want to do is select all of your non-selects, right click and uncheck enable. In other words, they're disabled. You don't view their contents. And that can be quite handy. Something I want to point out here though is, even though I right clicked on these clips and went into a menu, this kind of function can be easily assigned to a keyboard shortcut. In my case, it's the E key on the keyboard. When I press E, it enables or disables clips in the timeline. And just on that point, if I go into the keyboard shortcuts window here, you can see all the things that can be assigned keyboard shortcuts, which in Premiere Pro is pretty much anything. And you have full use of all the modifier keys: Command, Alt, Control, Function, Shift, and also you can assign a combination of those keys to key presses if you want to. So just a reminder that Premiere Pro is very flexible in that regard. At the top of the timeline here, I've added a whole load of markers. Some of them are spanned markers, some of them are basic markers. And remember, you can see the markers beneath the monitors as well if you want to. It's just right now I've turned them off, but of course you can put them back on again with this option, Show Markers. And in Premiere Pro, you can have 8 different colors of markers, and you could use the different colors for different reasons. In the timeline, you'll see that I've used green, the basic marker color, just to kind of mark a range of clips where something is happening. For example, this is a whole load of Morris dancers in these clips. This is a whole load of clips of a horse in a field. And the blue markers I've used as a kind of notes to myself for what I would like to do to these clips. So for example, this says slowly zoom in. If I just jump, whoops, to the other markers like this. This one I want to reframe. This I want to use this music, and so on. There is of course a markers window as well, which you can choose if you go to the pull down, but it's easier to use a key press. In my case it's just 5 on the keyboard. There we've got a markers window, and for each marker you have a thumbnail image of the frame the marker is over at that particular point. Its in and out point, because it could be a span marker, and of course the text associated with that marker. So if I click on any of these, it will jump in the timeline to that particular marker, which is extremely handy. In the timeline itself, you'll see that there are 2 different color labels for the clips. I've applied these especially. I've got a reddish color and I've got a bluish color. And in an editing program, you can of course come up with your own system for what these colors indicate. For example, in this project, if I had shot all the footage with two separate cameras, then maybe the red label color would indicate camera A and the blue label color camera B. The color labels in Premiere Pro can actually be defined in terms of the actual color that you use. So if you come up to here to Preferences and then down to Label Colors, click on that. In here you can actually choose the very specific color that you want for each specific label. You can even give each label its own name if you want to. The last thing to say about labels is that if you want the labels to be the same in both the project window and in the timeline, then you need to configure that on a per project basis. And the way that you do that is you come up here to File, Project Settings, General, and it's this checkbox here. Check this on if you want the labels and also the names of your clips to be the same across the project window and in the timeline. So that if I was to, for example, choose these and change the label color to something else, it's updated in the timeline. One thing to be aware of is that I've noticed with editing programs is that this change of color label can never seem to be undone with Command Z. You need to do it manually. The last way that I've organized clips in my timeline, and perhaps the most important way, is that I've added some metadata to the clips themselves. I'm just opening up the project window here, and you can see as I scroll down that in the description metadata field I've added just a whole load of just basic keywords like table, apple, crowd, pumpkin. These are just descriptive, what you might call keywords of what's in those particular shots. I could have gone into much greater detail. I could have had a separate field for shot composition or camera movement, all sorts of things, but I think the most important, the most basic metadata to have is some kind of descriptive keyword telling you what's in that shot. Now the thing is, I can search in the project window using the bin filter really simply. If I just click in here, I can just type in, start typing pumpkin, and I don't have to write the whole of the word before you get all of the instances of that particular keyword being applied to a particular clip. And that's all well and good, but as you'll probably have noticed, the way I tend to work is from the timeline itself. So what I want to do is find in the timeline all the clips that have the keyword pumpkin attached to them. Well, the way to do that is to use the find function. So you select the timeline first, Command F to find, and then first of all you would choose from this pull down the metadata field that you want to search. You can't search all fields and you can't search any custom made fields, but there is quite a range of things that you can search here. In this case it's description, and of course, once you've set this once for the project, you don't need to set it again. And then you type here, we're looking for pumpkin, and I'm going to click on find all. And what happens is that in the timeline, all of the clips that have that particular keyword, or that piece of metadata attached, are highlighted, and the playhead jumps to the first clip that has that metadata attached to it. So that's really handy. A slight variation on this is if you were to do the same thing again, Command F to find. This time I'm going to click on find rather than find all. And what happens is the playhead jumps to the first clip that has that metadata attached to it, doesn't highlight all those clips, And the way to jump to the next clip that has that metadata attached is to use the find again function, which I've mapped to Alt F on the keyboard. So if I go Alt F, that's another pumpkin shot, and another one, and another one, and so on. So hopefully you can see that by using markers, label colors, and metadata, you can organize your select sequences very efficiently. If you're coming from other editing software, then certain things in Premiere Pro may seem a bit unfamiliar at first, but believe me, this is very intuitive software. It shouldn't take you long to learn how to do certain things. In the last tutorial, I was showing how to cut sections from a sequence into another sequence. This is just a reminder of how simple that process is. You just need to get your sequence into the source monitor, set an in, set an out, toggle to your target timeline, and overwrite or insert. It's really straightforward. That first step of getting the sequence into the source monitor, the way I did it just then was to click and drag, but that could be just assigned to a keyboard shortcut. So in my case, I've set this up as Q on the keyboard, so when I press Q, my sequence is in the source monitor, and then if I want to gang this sequence's timeline to the video output in the source monitor, I can come here to the spanner and choose Open Sequencing Timeline. But again, if you're a smart editor, you'll know to assign things to key presses. So in my case, it's just the W button on the keyboard. And now, as I move through this timeline, you can see the timeline and the source monitor are ganged together. And one of the things I love about Premiere is the fact that you can have multiple sequences open at the same time, tabbed or viewed in parallel. So for example, I've got a bunch of sequences here, and I can work on these individually. I can set in and out points, I can add markers, do whatever, and Premiere will remember the state they were in the last time I used them. And as I switch between these different sequences, the video output changes in the source monitor. If I come to my main sequence here, which isn't ganged with the source monitor, I can see the output in the program monitor. So I'll just close these down. Now, if you're coming from, say, Avid Media Composer, you're probably used to doing things a bit differently. Typically in that program you would set an in, set an out, and then you would probably press a button which would copy this section of this timeline, and then that section would be saved as a kind of temporary subsequence which you can choose from in the source monitor, and then you open another sequence and cut into it. Well, in Premiere you don't really need to do that. It's quite a cool feature of Avid, but you don't need to go via the source monitor in the first place with Premiere. It's literally just set the in, set the out, toggle to your target timeline, and overwrite. No need to go via the source monitor. And remember, in Premiere, if you want to insert your clips as a nest rather than individual clips, you can do that by pressing this button here, and then overwriting or inserting, and then you get this nested clip here. I'll just uncheck that again. Now, if you want to save this section of this timeline for later, what you could do is just create a subsequence. Right-click in this area, choose Make Subsequence, and remember that can be assigned to a key press as well. And then when you have your subsequence, you could save it for later, and then maybe drag it straight into your main sequence here. Or you could say open it in its own timeline, choose just a section of it with in and out, toggle to your main sequence, and insert or overwrite into the timeline. If you're not happy with the track patching, you could always undo that, and you can change the track patching here on the far left of the timeline area. Let's say I just want clips that were on the video 3 track and the audio 2 track. Now when I overwrite, I just get those clips, and you can even in Premiere set up track patching presets. So for example, if I wanted to save this track patching as a preset that I can come back to later on, I can just right click in this area and save a new preset by clicking here, give it a name. I've already got preset 1, so I can call this preset 2. And you can also assign a keyboard shortcut to it as well if you want to. So that's really handy. The last thing is I just want to remind you of the flexibility of Premiere Pro. If I just close the subsequence there, and I'm going to grab the main sequence, pull it down to here so that I can see these two sequence timelines in parallel. And as you can see, you can set an in, set an out, toggle to your target timeline, just check that the track patching is set up correctly here, and cut straight into it. But that's not the only way you can carry that process out. You could, for example, go the old-fashioned route of just copying and pasting. So you've got your range, Command C to copy, toggle to your main sequence, and Command V to paste. If you want to just copy and paste some individual clips, you can select them in one timeline, just get rid of that range, copy, and now paste into this sequence. Or you could just click and drag from one sequence timeline into the other. There's that option as well. Lastly, as you can see, you can just drag a sequence or a clip from the source monitor or from the project window straight into a sequence like this. That's really handy. Or you could do the same just by clicking and dragging, pulling straight into the program monitor and dropping your clip or your sequence into one of these drop zones. So for example here I've got insert before. If I choose that, release, it inserts these clips before where the playhead was. So hopefully you get the impression now that Premiere Pro CC is an extremely flexible and intuitive program. Thanks very much for watching, and happy editing.